So please welcome our next speaker, who is Professor Felicitas Morhart from the University of Lausanne in Switzerland. She's also the founder of the Swiss Center for Luxury Research. Yes. Exactly. So really a specialist in all matters of luxury. And Felicitas will be talking about luxury trends and troubles of today.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Felicitas.
Thank you for the
floor
invitation.
Is yours.
Thank you very much. Hi, welcome everyone this afternoon. So my talk is going to be about luxury. Jewelry and watches are, of course, part of that luxury industry, but and probably the one that is faring the best among all of the luxury industries at the moment. But always the problem is when everybody knows that jewelry is going well, then everyone jumps on it, right? So we're going to be facing the same problems as the other industries too very soon. So it's probably better to understand why has it become so difficult to play in the luxury game. And that's what the whole talk is going to be about. Probably you have come about this article and this quote by Frédéric Grangier in the Business of Fashion, where he was actually bemoaning that even already the fine jewelry and watches industry are starting to lose relevance. I'll let you quickly read it. So he was actually daring to put the finger in the wound, because he said, well, it's very easy to blame the Chinese customer, the wars, the microeconomic environment, to say that the industry is going very badly. But if we're very, very honest to each other, then we know that there's something else that we need to look at, and it's ourselves. And what he's saying here is this luxury fatigue that we see among many customers at the moment, also in the watches and jewelry business, is coming from some factors that we have under control and that we should take under control to make things better again. So what I have prepared for you is a field of tensions that explain from a research point of view why it has become so difficult to play luxury at the moment. So you already see the main topics I'm going to talk about. It is the democratization versus elitism. It is fluidity versus materialism. It is sustainability versus opulence. It's transparency versus mystery. Gender fluidity versus evolution. And AI versus the human hand. And these tension fields, actually, they can explain to us that if we do not navigate these fields of tensions correctly, we can become irrelevant. That's maybe the best case. But we can become politically incorrect, and that is probably the worst case. Or just cheesy, but all of these options are not very sexy, right? So let's start with the very first one. So democratization, I think we all know it, that many large groups have opened their structures to the affluent, but also to the less affluent people, to the aspirational groups. Meaning that we have more and more people who can afford luxury. We have Vestiaire Collectif, where you can buy secondhand. You can even buy counterfeit and dupes. On social media, nobody knows whether it's the right thing or not. So there's many more ways to live a luxury lifestyle without really being part of the elite. The problem with that is the real elite does not forcefully like that. And here we come into a very touchy topic, because we need to be clear about to whom do we talk. Because luxury is not, per definition, about equality. It's quite the opposite. So the idea of luxury is based on the idea of social stratification. And social stratification means that you have a hierarchy. You can even trace that back to animal kingdom, and it seems that we as human beings, we need hierarchy. We want hierarchy. Just look at when you go on your next flight, when you fly back maybe. What are you flying? Economy, business, or first class? So just this little stupid curtain separating economy class from business class shows you how much we value differentiation. That actually makes a difference in the price of your flight ticket. So we have this recurring social stratification that we need. And even researchers have looked at it from point of view that you might very much dislike, because the names of these different segments are a little bit, yeah, I would say not very friendly, but there's a lot of truth in there, and I will quickly walk you through that. So you see these two axes here. You have one axis, need for status, so that means how much people really need to show off. And then you have the y-axis, which shows, are the people who buy your items really rich, or do they just pretend to be rich? And so you have different categories in the luxury market. And again, it's very important for us to know, where do we play? And there is actually quite a lot to do here. Except for the very first one, the lower left is not interesting for us, because these are people who don't have the money to spend on luxury, and they're also not interested. So that's not your target customer. But it already starts over here with a so-called poser. And this is a terminology of these researchers, which are cited down here. You could also just call them aspirational customers. So these are people who are not really rich, maybe also very much young people, who aspire to one day belong to the club of rich people and to the people who really can afford luxury. But these are maybe people who start buying entry products. They might have a keychain from Louis Vuitton. They might have maybe a Gucci watch, which is not very expensive because Gucci is not a watchmaker, but yet you have the luxury label on it. But I think you get the idea. There's nothing wrong about it. Huge market there, fine. But we need to know this is not the real luxury customer that most jewelers or watchmakers would talk about. Then you have the parvenu. That is the classical nouveau riche, the new rich. People who have become very fast, very rich, but they don't have the social education. They don't have the socialization into the luxury lifestyle. And I think you all know who I'm talking about. Pretty sure you know these kind of customers, but it's important to spot them, right? To spot them, who belongs where, so that I can treat them correctly. These are people who buy very loud status symbols, so they are fine with going with a Rolex, even if they are not watch connoisseurs, because they know this is an expensive thing. Sometimes they even come and say, give me the most expensive watch, or give me the most expensive piece you have. And sometimes they even forget it in the shop and just take the invoice with them to show them to their friends. So these things happen, because in the end, it's not about the connoisseurship of what is behind, it's more about the status symbol. Well, and then finally you have, and maybe important to say, the parvenus absolutely don't want to be associated with these other two groups, because these are the groups where they actually rose from. So that's very important psychologically to keep them distant. And then you have the last category, which is the patrician. Here you would say it's the blue blood, it's the old money, it's the aristocracy who were brought up in wealth, who are wealthy and who are always going to stay wealthy, with a lot of value education, oftentimes not very showy, but very knowledgeable about the category that they are buying. And so for us, especially in the watches and jewelry business, this is a reality that we need to accept. And just putting all of them together and mixing them in our showrooms, in our boutiques, is a difficult one. We need to create a sensitivity for who is who and with whom do I make business. And there's no valuation in there. You can do business with all of them except for the lower one, but just be clear about with whom do you want to play. Then the second aspect is fluidity versus materialism. And here you might think, what is fluidity? So there is a very interesting sociologist named Zygmunt Bauman, and Zygmunt Bauman, already many years ago, he wrote that modern society is not solid anymore. So we are living in times which have become very fluid, and I think with digitalization that has become even more pronounced, that our paths of life, they are not predefined as they were maybe as our grandparents' stages of life. So we change career maybe 2, 3, 4 times in our lives. We change partners maybe 1 or 2, 3 times per life. We change where we live. We change what we want. We change our appearance. So there's a lot more fluidity in there, which of course has an impact on how we consume. And I don't know whether anybody of you has read this book, The 4-Hour Workweek. You did? So this book talks about the new rich, but not the new rich as you saw on the previous slide. He says the new rich are people who live by a different currency. And this new currency is quality time and the freedom to do what you love doing in your life. So what he's propagating is a lifestyle which doesn't need a lot of money, but just enough so that you have maximum time to do what you love doing and to live the life of your dreams. So he actually says, if you have a masses of stuff like houses, vacation homes, big cars, all of this takes away your freedom, because then you have to go every weekend into this ski home, right? Who wants to go skiing in St. Moritz every weekend? That's not cool anymore. You need to go somewhere else every weekend. So it's actually the idea of taking back your freedom, which is the currency of the new rich. So what does that mean for us? Is that still cool to buy watches and jewelry? Think about it again, right? That's maybe why people want to start giving away, buying something new, to have the latest trend, sharing it, maybe just having the access to it, and of course the whole experience economy that comes with it. So having the coolest, most Instagrammable experience. And here's another cool model that actually puts together what we have seen before with the idea of liquidity. So on the y-axis you see the transition from liquidity to solidity, and on the left-hand side you have the nouveau riche, not very expert customer, and on the right-hand side you have the old rich, the expert customer. And again here, you can decide where you want to play. There is business everywhere, but it is important to do it in a way that it is relevant. So I think we all know these very liquid forms of consumption about conspicuous experiences. So the typical in spot, the restaurant, which is in for a season, then disappears the next season, but everyone needs to have this Instagram post, like the Nusret. Maybe you know that, the guy who has these golden steaks and he makes this show with the sea salt on the golden steak. That's a very Instagrammable experience. Great. But it has its time, right? At some point you have been there, you have your post, and then it's good. So here, you need to come up with something new all the time. Then you have the classical conspicuous possession, so that's the classical must-have bag. How do you stay fresh here? How do you create new experiences here? Well, most of the time through collaborations, through limited editions. But again, I think you see here that everyone is doing it, right? And it's running out very quickly in terms of freshness. Then we come probably the most into your area here. It's the epic possession. So the epic possession where you can create knowledge around. So timepieces that are being given to next generations, collector's pieces. You have, of course, the standard pieces of the big brands. These are safe bets, right? You will always be able to sell them over Vestiaire Collectif and have a nice price in return. But here it's all about educating customers. So I am coming from an educational institution, but I can tell you, the young people, they adore becoming connoisseurs. So when I take them to Watches and Wonders, for example, they find that sexy because they can come back and tell their friends how much they have learned about, watches and this whole field. So this is a status symbol in itself, education about status symbols, which we can much more leverage, especially in the watches and jewelry. And then finally, the aesthetic experience. So this is for the most advanced luxury consumer. This is people who would spend $25,000 for eating nothing during a fasting retreat. Think about it. It's very intrinsically motivated, but of course there is something completely different behind. There is something behind which we call self-transformation. So luxury is becoming more and more about me and myself. What do I do as a luxury product? And this is just a hypothesis that I'm having, but I think jewelry is so popular and successful at the moment is because you're embellishing yourself. So I feel that the luxury product is more and more becoming the human body itself, and that's why we also see longevity and all these quality of life and medical wellness industries moving up so much. And I think for jewelry, again, what is the most successful moment? We have heard it 2 talks before, it is when there is an engagement ring being bought, right? Or it's this wedding ring. It's this big moment in life. And why is this so powerful? Because it is transforming something in the lives of the people, and you attach your product with it. So creating much more meaningful experiences, not just, a lot of sound, a lot of color, and a lot of bling bling. That's not what are powerful experiences. Powerful experiences are when they're touching people's hearts and when they're transforming people. And this is where we need to go in luxury. Then, my favorite topic, we just had the previous panel on sustainability. We have the corner on traceability over there. The problem here is the concept of sustainability and the concept of luxury don't go well together. And why am I allowed to say that? Because psychology tells us. And that is so tricky, and that I have a model for you that explains why it is so hard to put sustainability and luxury into one pot, and how can we get out of there. So there is a model which is called the circular model of human values. This has been already devised by a guy named Shalom Schwartz in the 90s. And he found out that across the globe, universally, people have values that are structured in the same way in our minds. And this is this structure. So we all have values that relate to achievement and power. So this red part down here is the luxury part, because luxury is very much rooted in the psychology of moving up in the hierarchy, power, having things under control. Opposite, you see everything which is related to universalism. We like each other, we save the planet, we are nice to each other, we are pro-social. This is everything related to sustainability. And then you have 2 other value systems which are about conservation, so everything which is about structure, family, history, tradition. And one aspect up here, which is everything about innovation and change. And you can see those quarters that are opposite to each other normally create conflict in our minds. So when sometimes we know that we crave for security, for example, which is down here, but at the same time we want adventure. And if you're in a safe structure and you're craving for adventure, well, that can sometimes create problems, right? So we know these value conflicts. And the same can happen, well, when it comes to luxury and sustainability. Because research shows when you activate at the same time the sustainability green mind and the materialism mind, we have done our own studies on this, you create a value conflict, and that makes people feel inauthentic. So just imagine you're driving in your Porsche Cayenne, gas-guzzling Porsche Cayenne, to the farmer's market. You can't tell why, but you feel weird, right? You feel weird, there's something wrong, because you are in 2 different value systems. So does that mean that luxury per se cannot be sustainable? No, but we need to communicate about it a little bit smarter. So we have learned that saying sustainable luxury creates this value conflict. So it's better to actually move towards these adjacent parts which are compatible both with luxury and sustainability. Because these quarters which lie next to yourself are very much combinable with the concept. And just think about the first one. When we think about innovation and luxury, that goes very well. One very successful example, like it or not, was Tesla. Tesla was not saying, we have electric cars which are sustainable. They were marketing Tesla as a very sexy sports car. And by the way, it's very environmentally friendly. This is very nicely working because it was on sexiness and innovation, but it was still sustainable. It was just do it, don't talk too much about it. And the second one, I think this is what we do a lot in jewelry and watches, is referring to tradition, authenticity, telling the story of 150 years. That goes very well with the idea of luxury, but at the same time also very well with the idea of sustainability, because you are heeding a patrimony, you are heeding craftsmanship, and these kind of concepts. And they are compatible with both worlds, with luxury and with sustainability. So the bottom line here is, yes, sustainability and luxury can be combined, but don't talk too openly about these two concepts. Just try to do it a little bit smarter, to talk either about concepts that are fine in line with both of the concepts, or just do it and don't talk too much about it, because customers will find out anyways if they're interested. So the next step is related to this one, and this is the aspect of transparency versus mystery. And I'm the co-founder of Originalluxury, which is all about, making the luxury industry more transparent. And you would say, well, what is she talking about here? Again, it is clear that we need to do these things, right? Sustainability is not negotiable. I don't say that, right, when I say don't talk too much about it. Of course, we have to do these things. But it's not your selling argument. This is not why people buy jewelry. They buy it for a different reason. When you go buy the wedding ring, honestly, the bride does not want to know about mining conditions in that moment. Maybe afterwards, but she wants to have the biggest stone as the biggest proof of love. That's what counts, and that's why it is so emotional. So I think we need to make very clear where do we need to be transparent and where do we need to recreate the mystery. So the disenchantment to too much data, too much information, I call it death by data. These are two separate parts in the value chain, right? The transparency, the data, that goes into the digital data passport, where you want to look at it, but you don't have to. But you need to do a storytelling which re-enchants people. So this is the most difficult part. What do we do with all these data that we have collected? We just talked about it with Iris in the previous panel. How do you create a nice story out of this so that you don't disenchant people during the purchase process? Now we come to another topic that is very contested, let's say so, but which I find of utmost importance in the industry of jewelry and watches, is everything which is related to gender. So I'm pretty sure you remember the peacock from your biology class. So why does the peacock have this big tail, the male peacock? You probably remember it's for attracting female peacocks, and the larger the tail, the better. There's just one downside for the male peacock, that this is an incredibly impractical thing. It's actually very life-threatening, because if there is a predator, running away with this big tail is impossible. So if this bird is still alive, although it has such a big tail, means this is a very fit bird. And then you might say, what does that have to do with luxury? Well, quite a lot. Because luxury items are the male's peacock tail. Because luxury is as unnecessary as a big peacock tail, but it costs a lot of resources. And it actually still works quite well. And that is, when I talk about this with my students, of course, they don't want to hear this message. Of course, the female students don't want to hear this message. And when I first read this paper, it's a very well-known researcher, a Chinese researcher who did this. She was actually not allowed to talk about this for a while because it was too politically incorrect. However, research shows that our brains are still very hardwired when it comes to evolution, and that women react to men who flaunt large resources is a given, whether we want to admit it or not. There is, of course, a social layer of emancipation and of everyone is the same, and so on and so on. I don't deny that. However, there is this evolution which is in our brains. And here we need to be very honest with ourselves and with our customers. To what kind of customer do I talk? Am I in a business where there is still these stereotypes of, the guy comes with their trophy wife, or the guy comes with his mistress, and you need to mark in your CRM, oh, there are actually two women, right? All these things happen. In hotel, that's the same thing. Or are you more in a market where you say, okay, we open up, we are a new brand, we have wedding rings for men with diamonds, or we have gender-neutral jewelry. This is all fine, but you need to know, and you need to know your customer, how traditional are they, or how progressive they are. And this is a cursor, which is only your own market research that you can do by checking in with your customers. And I give just one example, because I can imagine that this is a touchy topic, but do you remember the relaunch of Jaguar some months ago? So this was a huge, check it out on the internet. So Jaguar was known to be a very elegant, very traditional brand. The main customer was probably a 50-year-old man, successful. And then all of a sudden they came up with a whole new campaign about gender fluidity and colorful, and actually gender was, you could not know who was what. But it was absolutely in the trend of the time. The only problem was that the customers that they had were absolutely shocked by this. They said, this is not us. This is not me anymore. So yes, you can do such a shift, but you need to know that you're going to lose the people who brought you here. And this is dangerous. So Jaguar has to either work with a completely new set of customers, or they have to regain the hearts of the ones to whom they actually said, we don't want you old guys anymore, right? Very difficult. Yeah, and then finally comes a topic that we cannot circumvent anymore. We also had it on the last panel discussed, and I'm still trying to get my head around it. I am in a jury on technology startups in fashion in Ticino, in Switzerland. And there's more and more startups that are coming with AI solutions for the luxury and fashion industry. And this is around 15 people in the jury, and every time when somebody came with an AI solution, which was proposing solutions for the design or creation part, everyone cringed, said, this is a no-go, like, no, we don't want this. So, of course, luxury is very much about the creative genius of somebody. It's the legacy of somebody. It's the authorship, which is human, which is actually the price that we pay so much for. And some research goes into this direction. So I brought you some first studies on it, which actually looked at mainstream brands, this is fashion, and luxury brands. And the gray bar here is that people were told that this has been designed by a human being. The black bar is that this has been designed by AI. And what the results show is that for mainstream brands, actually it doesn't matter. This difference is not significant. So the liking of these products, whether they're human-made or AI-made, doesn't make a difference. But it does play a difference for everything which is in the luxury category. Exactly for this reason, that AI takes away the emotional essence of the products. But, and now comes an important but, this does not apply to technology-oriented products. So if you did that in the automotive category, the results are not the same. This is really for very emotional products, but as we are in a very emotional category here in jewelry and watches, this is definitely to keep in mind. And another study, and this is the more worrisome, is this is still a study done with Missoni, also a fashion brand. And here, I hope I brought you this one, exactly. Here they did once the study where they were blinded or where it was open that it was created by AI. So in this regard, you can see here, when people did not know that it was designed by AI, they evaluated the product, the t-shirt in that case, much, much higher than the human-generated one. These differences might not look big, but actually it was a field experiment, and they could see that the sales lift between the human-created t-shirt and the AI-created t-shirt was 127%, which is quite something. However, when it was laid open or disclosed that this was generated by AI and the other one by human beings, this difference leveled out again. So what do we learn from that? Well, we clearly learn that if we do not say or if we do not disclose that we used AI in our process, yeah, we might get a nice advantage over those people who still work with human craft. However, is that ethical or morally correct? That's the other question. So I leave you with that, with my luxury problems to think about. Again, here, this is not to say that you should only go either or completely go into the trendy part. It is looking at your customers, looking at your field, and know where to put the cursor. Sometimes it's more on the traditional side, sometimes it's more on the trendy side. And everyone has to keep that in mind, that you have to do it for yourself, but there is psychology at play that we cannot ignore. And if you want to know more about this, here's an article I wrote about it, and of course you're happy to reach out. Thank you very much. Wow, this was 0. Thank you.
Swiss precision. Any questions? Time for a question or two?
Any remarks, maybe?
I might say you also have an excellent podcast on many of these topics, Luxury on Air, and lots of resources online. So it's very useful to also get all this insightful research.
And especially a great episode on pearls with Laurent.
Can you share a little bit more on lab-grown diamonds or natural diamonds, given that it's such a big conversation around the show? And I think you were involved in a symposium in Dubai on this as well.
Yeah.
Where's the world going in terms of that, and in terms of also marketing research and how consumers are perceiving this?
So marketing research is still scant, especially in the, let's say, in the academic journals. But what the regular, JCK research are showing is that, of course, lab-grown picks up, especially for the reason that it is like larger stones for the same money. You have more creative possibilities. So that is much more sexy from a consumer point of view. And we come back to our bride, right, who sits there and who can choose. Do you want the natural, which is like this, or do you want the larger one? And she probably would go for the larger one because the difference cannot be told. But of course, what I bemoan there in the discussion around lab-grown diamonds, and this is mostly coming from the natural diamond side, is that lab-grown diamonds are being treated like a commodity. And I think this is dangerous for both categories, because this is just ending up in a price war. A diamond, even if it's man-made, is not a commodity. And this is us, the industry, who needs to add the story and need to add the perceived value, because marketing is all in the value perception, right? And a lab-grown diamond is still there's a lot of research behind. Like if we would have been able to create, if we would be able to create gold, just imagine, right? So there is a lot of research behind there, and this is a beauty also in the in the lab-grown diamonds. And I have to say, I completely changed my mind about lab-grown diamonds. I was completely anti, maybe a year ago still, and then I went to this conference and I saw a complete new culture around lab-grown diamonds. It was very entrepreneurial, very creative. People were just on fire with this. And I thought, even if it's just for this culture, this is it's a more technological luxury. And this is all, it has its place. Both have their place, I think. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I really like that point. But I also wonder, doesn't it come back to the fact that storytelling and marketing are challenging topics? I mean, we talk about sustainability, but we're storytelling in that. And a lot of the challenges, we had a talk on this yesterday, is that most of the marketing out there is very generic.
Yeah.
Be it about lab grown or just jewelry. Everybody's using the same terms, saying we've got great craftsmanship. And you need to go further in who are you, what's your brand, the marketing, the story. And that's what sells, right?
Yeah, and I think what is really important, and that is why I chose the very psychological topic here, is that if we go deep down into the meaning for people, then the storytelling becomes relevant. And if we find more parts in people's lives where jewelry, for example, can play a role, where it can augment our being, then we have much more latitude. So it's much more psychological than just, doing a little bit of marketing.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you.